move to energy part. Okay. So this is the China primary energy consumption by fuel. We've already seen kind of this trend in the beginning of the lecture. As you can see, coal is a major source of energy for China, and its share is kind of stable and very significant. And the energy use in China, per capita energy use, is growing, but as if you compare it to the US or average OECD, it's still quite low. They just managed to go over the total world average, but anyway, you can see that they aim to have the same living standards as in the developed world, and they kind of, the energy use will support this transition. So this is the major reason why experts expect energy consumption to grow in China up to at least 2040. And the composition of this energy consumption will be, well, if the hydropower here and oil kind of flat and the same amount, but coal should be replaced by natural gas and renewable sources. That's BP projections. If you look at this, the share of different sources of energy, you can see that the share of coal is actually decreasing and now is less than 60%. And it was mainly replaced by hydro and natural gas and renewables and nuclear. And yeah, you can see that oil consumption more or less flat, but coal, yeah, is decreasing. And if you look at this amount of renewable energy, China is one of the world leaders in deployment of renewable generation. So, but still the share is really, really low in primary energy consumption. It's a little bit different for electricity, but anyway. So natural gas is important for us because we will look at it in the end of our lecture, and you can see that gas is used primarily not for electricity generation, but in industry, so manufacturing, chemical industry. The second one, let's look at 2019. The second one would be residential and commercial. It would be heating and cooking. And the third one would be power generation or electricity generation. It's a little bit, the picture is a little bit different from the world because gas usage is very different. In Europe, it would be used mostly for electricity generation paired with renewables. So electricity generation, that's what we've briefly talked about, that this unprecedented growth in electricity generation, which kind of speaks for the overall living standards in China. But I like this picture. It's a little bit outdated, maybe 2015, 2016. But what I like about this picture that it shows electricity generation projection, and everyone is talking about energy transition and assuming by transition replacement of one source by other sources. But we should take into account that the overall, the absolute production or consumption of electricity is expected to grow, and that even though the share of coal is decreasing and will be decreasing, it probably the absolute amount of coal consumed will remain pretty much the same, and the other growth will be ensured by nuclear, natural gas, and renewable sources. Let's now look at all these major sources of energy. So first of all, coal. This is China's own coal production. It doesn't tell you anything. but compared to consumption, you can see that they already need to import some amount of coal to meet their needs. Even though China is the world leader in coal production, and in 2015 here they produced 50% of the world total coal production. Yes, these are coal mining sites and coal-fired power plants. They're located very close to those most dense regions of China. This is a picture of 2012, and what China is doing, they try to move these coal-fired power plants from these coastal cities where the most population lives somewhere to combat the air pollution, because air pollution and water stress are really two problems which goes hand in hand with coal electricity generation. So this is a Tiananmen Square in China. I would say nowadays is far better, but when I first came to China in 2016, the situation was pretty much like this. And when I had to change the international terminal to domestic terminal, I took like a 5 minutes bus ride, and I couldn't see anything there because the air quality in Beijing was that bad. But I must say that they kind of really moving towards to have a cleaner air, because they tried to switch from coal to gas in electricity generation for the largest cities like Beijing and Shanghai, and really working on improving the air quality to live there. And this is the thing that every Chinese person would have on their phone. It's an air quality app, and they would check it every morning especially because of this PM 2.5, PM 10. This is the particles which are emitted by transport mostly, and these are very harmful for lungs and may cause different disease. So yeah, but I would say that this situation, if you go to Bangkok right now, you will see pretty much the same situation. So when the standards of living and the overall, when people start to earn more money and overall welfare is rising, they kind of switch from bicycles and motorbikes to cars, and this leads to what we see here with those emissions. But if I said that for biggest cities, they're trying to move from coal to gas, for the countryside, coal is the major source for cooking and heating and all other purposes. So this is a big challenge. But, as you saw the projections, they kind of have not that many options, and they're working now on the improvement of coal-fired power plants and install carbon capture and all these things to make sure that even though they produce electricity from coal, it's kind of cleaner than before. And really, the recently built coal-fired power plants are really of good quality. Now oil. Well, oil production in China is growing, but the demand, if you in burgundy color here, far bigger than their own consumption. So this would be the share of import. But the refinery capacities, which are there in place already, tell you that they expect even more. So they plan to import even more oil. What is interesting that until 1992, China was an oil exporter and they exported oil to Japan. But everything changed after that. We will talk about this. yeah, China has its own oil reserves, but reserve to production ratio is only less than 12 years, so it's not that big if you take into account their consumption. These are major fields in China's oil fields, and Datin here in the northeast is the biggest one, because it ensures, you know, even though this picture is quite old, but you can see that one oil field ensures quite a big share of the total production, over 50 million tons per year of crude oil. Probably now it's less, but obviously, but still. But you can see here that the storage capacities here in green are located near the most dense areas, and they oriented on and supplied by imported oil. Yes, and China went from being an oil exporter to an oil importer, and as Daniel Yergin writes in his books, the government thought it was a disaster and it was negatively perceived. From an industry point of view, we felt ashamed. It was a loss of face because we couldn't supply our own economy. That was someone from one of the national oil companies in China who said this. Natural gas. Well, natural gas, they also have their own production, obviously, but their consumption is far bigger, and so this is the amount of imported gas that they import, and the expectation are such as, you know, by 2040 they will import 3 times more natural gas. They will consume more and import more. So these are major LNG trade flows, so gas can be delivered to China by pipelines or as LNG. And you can see here all the, you know, trade routes, most of them goes to Northeast Asia. And why is that? I hope you can see that, but Japan is the first LNG importer in the world. China in 2018 became the second largest oil importer. South Korea is the third one, and they are supplied, and all of them are in Northeast Asia, obviously. I'm sorry. And they are supplied mostly by Qatar, Australia, Russia, the US. So this is a new report. Yeah. So this one shows you the shares of pipeline imports and LNG imports. So pipeline is the dark red or whatever, and LNG is pink one. So you can see kind of that the Chinese government tried to maintain the more or less balanced shares of both of these sources. And why is that? Because the majority of import for China goes through the Strait of Malacca, because Strait of Malacca, Sonda Strait, and Lombok Strait are those straits which connects the Indian Ocean and Pacific Ocean and represent the shortest route between those two. And this exposure to this route, which just in case can be blocked, is really a reason for concern for the Chinese government. Here you can see the ship traffic near Singapore, and basically all LNG tankers and oil, not LNG carriers and oil tankers are passing the Singapore. I'm sorry. So, and this is a reason and yeah, major concern for Beijing, because they need to be sure that shortages of energy do not constrain the economic growth that is required to achieve their goals. That is why energy security is a central issue for their planning in energy strategy. So energy security is an uninterrupted availability of energy sources at an affordable price. And here we're talking about long-term energy security. So that energy supply goes in line with economic developments and environmental needs. This picture is really good in explaining energy security concepts, because there are 4 A's of energy security. It would be affordability in terms of prices, it would be availability on the global market, it would be acceptability in terms of environmental requirements, and accessibility in terms of import, or anyway, kind of, is it possible to deliver the energy when it's needed the most? And so China's energy policy or energy security strategy has 2 points. They need to diversify sources of import and ensure the safety ways of their transportation. And if we're talking about oil or gas, they're trying to decrease its reliance on seaborne routes of transportation and develop more projects with pipeline delivery. Yeah, just another quote from the Steve Cole book, that there is a clearly an anxiety about the vulnerability of transport routes, particularly on the seas. That's why Chinese major national oil companies go outside and invest in many projects outside of China. And this is an interesting picture from Vladislav's paper published a couple of years ago. And you can see that Chinese national companies, like no others, are going outside of China and trying to secure oil supply beyond their borders. And by 2015 they secured more than 120 million tons of oil per year from overseas expansion. This is an energy security scale, and what China is doing, they're trying to avoid this option, because sea lines are most insecure in war times or times of any disturbances. So they kind of tend to secure these options, which are more stable, I would say. So where can China get oil and gas from by land? So there are 3 major directions. From the south, it would be Myanmar. From the west, it would be Central Asia, and from the north, it would be Russia. And we'll look briefly at all these 3 directions, though we don't have time. But I think I need 10 more minutes to finish it. So this is the port of Kiaopiu in Myanmar, and it kind of allows to deliver all the oil or gas from the Middle East to the port in Myanmar, and then by pipelines to the southern province of Yunnan in China, and then to Guangdong, or whatever the most populated areas where the supply is needed. Then from the west is energy cooperation with Central Asia, and you can see here in green it would be an oil pipeline. It's a project with Kazakhstan, and in the red color it would be a gas pipeline from Turkmenistan, and it's passing Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and comes to the point in China, in Xinjiang province, and it then delivered to Shanghai, and the overall length of this pipeline is more than 7,000 kilometers. Can you imagine that? So yeah, Kazakhstan, as I said, for oil, and gas pipeline from Turkmenistan. This is just the inauguration ceremony of this huge pipeline project from Turkmenistan, and China actually invested in the gas field development in 2009. Is the name for this field is Renaissance, and it's quite big one. Yeah. And the northern direction is a Russian Eastern Siberia Pacific Ocean oil pipeline, which was built in this period, 2009-2012, and it delivers, this capacity is 80 million tons per year. And this is the newly launched project, which was launched in December 2019. It's the Power of Siberia. It has a capacity of 38 BCM, billion cubic meters per year, and they kind of at some point they discussed the expansion of this pipeline, but so far this bit is already working, but they are planning to connect Kabuktinskaya field as well. But what is that is how it looks like. Yeah. What is interesting that there are more China energy deals overall, because obviously Russia represents a good partner in terms of energy cooperation for China, and there are more and more projects everywhere. I mean, it's infrastructure project, it would be refining projects in refining, and this was interesting. This is a slide from, I would say, from the beginning of this year. It was a question mark here, but in the end of March, Russian Gazprom discussed with President Putin the start of the development of this Power of Siberia 2 project, and they kind of, for many years, they discussed that it would be the gas going through Altai Mountains over here to China and coming to the northern part of China and Xinjiang region. But it was very controversial projects, and they discussed it for many, many years. But eventually, I think now they kind of agreed that they will go through Mongolia, and the project is completely different, because for Power of Siberia 1, they are taking the gas from the gas field in eastern Siberia, but for this one, for the second one, they are planning to take gas from Yamal, from the western Siberia gas fields here, and deliver them through Mongolia, right here in Hubei province, where Beijing is located. So kind of, yeah, smart move. But I mean, they are now started developing the project, I mean, on paper. So they claimed that they would able to deliver 50 BCM per year. So if you calculate all these volumes of gas potentially that can potentially be delivered to China, I don't know when, but in several years, it may be close to 100 BCM per year. So if you look at the current, this is the last slide. If you look at the current shares of all these countries supplying gas to Russia, well, to China, I'm sorry, you can imagine that if we will be able to deliver those two big projects, the share of gas supplied from Russia to China will be very, very significant. And so probably we can play a role in coal to gas switch in China and deliver some benefits other than just gas, and also environmental benefits. So yeah, kind of interesting and very important stuff to understand, because Russia is getting more and more important, and this cooperation is very important for the next several years, I believe. So thank you. everyone for your patience and for listening me for, yeah. But yeah, I was almost there. If you would start it on time, I think it would be, I think it's all right. If you have any questions, I would suggest you can ask them or just type them or ask. Yeah, let me do like this. Yeah, you can write in chat. I don't know if you can, if you're able. But let me know anyway.